Hey, welcome. So, have you ever been driving around your town and seen a sign for a new church? One that's meeting in a school auditorium or maybe a little storefront? And you've probably thought, man, where do all these churches come from? And do we really need more? Well, today we're going to dive into exactly that, the mission of church planting. And you know what? It's a totally fair question. Sometimes it can feel like there's already a church on every corner. But behind every single one of those new signs is a really specific mission, a deliberate plan that actually goes back thousands of years. It's not random at all. It's a core part of the Christian faith. So let's get on the same page and define what we're actually talking about here. At its heart, church planting is pretty much what it sounds like. It's the intentional effort to establish a brand new, local community of faith. We're talking more than just getting a few people together. It's about building a structured, self-sustaining community from the absolute ground up. But what's the real engine behind all this effort? To really get to the why, we have to go way back, all the way back to a single foundational command in Scripture. This is the starting line for the entire mission, the primary directive that has been fueling this movement for 2 millennia. And here it is. This is famously known as the Great Commission. Now, listen to the language here. This is not a suggestion. It's a direct command from Jesus Christ himself. Go, make disciples of all nations. And that last part, all nations, that is absolutely key. The scope here isn't just local or even national. It is a global mandate. So here's the bottom line. The mission is to make disciples everywhere. And think about it. If you're going to make disciples in new places, among new groups of people, you have to create new communities for them to belong to. You have to plant new churches. So that leads us to the next logical question. How in the world did the first followers actually pull this off? For that answer, we turn to the book of Acts in the New Testament. You can basically think of it as the original playbook, the inspired historical record of how the very first Christians took that Great Commission and put it into practice. And what you see here is their strategy laid out beautifully. This wasn't chaotic at all. It was this clear, systematic expansion, kind of like ripples spreading out in a pond. First, they built their home base right there in Jerusalem. Then, they moved out into the surrounding regions. And from there, the goal was the entire known world, what they called the ends of the earth. Now, the Apostle Paul, who was probably the most prolific church planter ever, he really refined this process into a blueprint that could be repeated. You can see it here. First, he would preach the gospel and make new disciples. Simple enough. Second, he'd circle back to strengthen and encourage them in their new faith. But, and this is the critical part, the final step was to appoint local leaders or elders in every single church. This created organized, self-governing communities that could then carry on the mission all by themselves. And this gets us to a much deeper question. Why the big focus on an organized church? Isn't faith just a personal thing between you and God? Well, the biblical blueprint suggests there's a much, much deeper purpose for gathering together in a formal community. This right here highlights a super important distinction. An individual's decision to believe, that's the starting point, not the finish line. The organized church is designed to be the home for that new faith, a place where it can grow, a community that nurtures it, and really a base of operations for that ongoing mission. And inside that community, faith is nurtured through what theologians call the means of grace. Now that might sound a little formal, but you can just think of them as the essential tools for building and strengthening belief. Things like the preaching of Scripture, the sacraments like baptism and communion, and the practice of church discipline. These are all communal activities that really need an organized church structure to happen. So this is where we see the practical how connecting right back to the deep why. That act of appointing elders, it wasn't just an administrative task. It implies a whole structure for discipline, which is seen as a mark of a healthy church. It shows us that good church structure, or ecclesiology, requires local, appointed leadership, and it hammers home the point that growing in faith, sanctification, is a team sport. It's a corporate effort that happens inside this community. Okay, so we've looked at the ancient why and how, but what does this actually look like today in the 21st century? Let's take a peek at the modern playbook for someone who feels called to start a new church. It's a really structured journey. It's not something people just jump into. First, a potential planter has to qualify. This means theological education, intense personal assessments, and being held accountable by a larger church network. Second, they plan. This means getting a sending church to back them up and gathering a committed core group of people. And finally, they launch. They establish public worship, and just like the Apostle Paul, they start developing local leadership to make sure that church has a healthy future. So, this whole mission isn't just for a select few pastors or planters. The whole idea is that it involves everyone in the church. With that in mind, let's look at the role that you could potentially play in this ongoing story. Here are 3 super clear, really actionable ways to get involved. First one, pray. Commit to praying specifically and consistently for the planter and that new little community. The second way is to support them, either with financial partnership or with practical help, donating equipment or offering childcare. And the third, which is maybe the biggest, is to prayerfully consider actually joining the team and becoming a founding member of that new church. So as you can see, church planting isn't some modern fad. It's a practice that's rooted in an ancient command and a historical blueprint. And it's all aimed at creating these communities where faith can really grow and flourish. The mission is absolutely ongoing. So the real question this leaves us with is, what part will you play in where the story goes from here?